Hello and welcome back to Kidocracy at Large. I'm Siddhan Chandra and here every Saturday to point out the various forms of kidocratic education happening in the world today. I have coined this term kidocracy to declare the rule of the minors and minorities. This rule is aspirational towards making humanity more and more democratic, to make humanity minoritarian, that is, to embrace the minorities in order to make those who can vote represent the values and goals of those who cannot. According to kidocracy, men need to become more like women, adults need to become more like children, and children need to be allowed to be more like children and animals need to be more and more wild, with a clearly acknowledged plan of rewilding the planet. This rewilding will involve a rewilding of ourselves in order to affiliate ourselves with animals, trees, plants, bacteria, and molecules of matter, so all of us can survive and thrive. This is necessary for a just green recovery from the current pandemic and to prevent future ones. An overlapping aspect of minoritarianism is that the majority affiliates itself more with the minorities, while the planet's richest 1% rule and control the 99%. We need to remember that the 99% includes the environment and 1 million species at risk of extinction if we continue on our current neoliberal consumerist course. The 1% shore up the status quo, and they rule by dividing the 99%. Kidocratic education aims to integrate the 99% so that we are able to control and regulate the 1% towards rewilding the planet and ourselves. Kidocratic education is aimed at adults and the 99%. Kidocratic education is led by minors and minorities towards educating adults and the 99% so that we can build democratic muscle. And how do minors and minorities educate? By risking their bodies mainly, by showing up in huge numbers, or even a small group, sometimes even a single person, in order to educate everyone about a civic democratic matter that concerns all of us. And these bodies emerge from the safety of their homes to risk assault, online and offline hate, acid attacks, arrests, rape, torture, and death. These bodies emerge time after time to address a matter left unaddressed by their governmental leaders, by the neoliberal elite, the rich, the priests, the 1%, men, adults, an imperial power on the other side of the planet, any powers that be. Through school strikes for climate, children educated the adults on the environment. Black Lives Matter emerged to teach the necessity of ending white supremacy. The Umbrella Revolution taught China about the need for democracy. Today I want to celebrate the people who emerged all over the 11 time zones of Russia to protest Vladimir Putin's arrest of Alexei Navalny. Navalny's courage and heroism in returning to Russia after an assassination attempt is stellar and needs no further description. I want to laud instead the Russian people, many of them first-time protesters and many of them teenagers, who emerged to protest Putin's fascist and corrupt rule. Joshua Yaffa writes in a dispatch from Moscow in the New Yorker, "After I returned home, I came across a number of videos with scenes of even more dramatic physical confrontations. In the most shocking, a number of protesters surround a car that state media later said belonged to the FSB. They pelt it with snow, then rush up, kicking its doors and windows. One man leaps through the air and kicks the windshield. State media claimed that the driver suffered an eye injury. Was this a new level of impatience and aggression, or the work of planted provocateurs meant to discredit the protesters and ensnare them in criminal investigations?" Both versions filled my Russian language social media feeds, not to mention scenes of police employing brute force. In one such video from St. Petersburg, a woman confronts a column of riot policemen dragging a protester by his arms and asks, "Why are you arresting him?" One of the police officers kicks her in the chest, knocking her to the ground. Watching these scenes, I couldn't help but think of Belarus, where months of street protests against the rule of Alexander Lukashenko have been marked by brutality and torture by the security forces, and a remarkable willingness from protesters to fight back against riot police, at times forcing them to retreat or abandon making an arrest. I also want to praise the men and women of Balochistan who emerged to mourn the mysterious death of Karima Baloch in Toronto recently. She had fled Pakistan 5 years ago after she was targeted for her human rights work in the turbulent region of Balochistan. According to Sadia Baloch, 21, a student activist quoted in a recent article in The Guardian, Karima was the epitome of women's politics in Balochistan. Because of her, we can leave our houses in a tribal and conservative society. We can protest in a male-dominated society. She was one of the first to challenge the brutal state, outdated norms, and tribalism. Her legacy lives on in us. According to the same article in The Guardian, in the days after Baloch's death, in December, the streets of cities and towns in Balochistan and the city of Karachi were filled with a groundswell of female protesters, chanting slogans against human rights abuses, calling themselves Karima, and demanding a thorough investigation into her death. The protests were subjected to a blackout in Pakistan's media, with barely any coverage at all. It appeared that Pakistan security officials were fearful a similar crowd would fill the streets of Balochistan for her funeral. On Sunday, hundreds rallied in Karachi, denouncing the government for not allowing a funeral prayer to be held for her in the city. The military then closed all roads leading to Thump, where her funeral was held on Monday. Baloch was buried amid tight security in the presence of immediate family members and hundreds of local mourners. And finally, I want to praise the impoverished farmers of India who exercised their democratic right to have a say in the matter of their livelihood. Modi's government had passed laws late last year that practically abandoned the farmers to the neoliberal, corporate-friendly global capitalism. And a coalition of farmers' unions laid siege to the city of Delhi. And after 60 days of negotiatory gridlock, marched in on India's Republic Day and some farmers went off course and upended the Republic Day celebrations. According to the New York Times, thousands of protesting farmers poured into New Delhi on Tuesday in what had been expected to be a peaceful protest during holiday celebrations and a military parade overseen by the Prime Minister. Some farmers broke with the main march and used tractors to dismantle police barricades. Many farmers carried long swords, tridents, sharp daggers, and battle axes, functional if largely ceremonial weapons. Police commanders deployed officers carrying assault rifles. They stood in the middle of main roads, tear gas swirling around them with their rifles aimed at the crowds. In some areas, video footage showed the police beat protesters with their batons to push them back. The farmers claimed the violence was stoked by the government and outside elements in an effort to derail their months of peaceful protest. The farmers waved flags and taunted officers. They also breached the Red Fort, the iconic palace that once served as the residence of the Mughal rulers of India, and hoisted atop the ramparts a flag that is often flown on Sikh temples. Local television channels showed farmers placing the body of a protester in the middle of a road. They claimed the man had been shot, but the police said he had died when his tractor overturned. The Indian government temporarily suspended internet service across the areas that have been hubs of protest for months, an official at the Home Affairs Ministry confirmed. There are many things at work in these expressions of kidocratic education. There is a difficult emotional quality to these eruptions. It is not squeaky clean. A lot more bonding between different categories of minorities needs to happen to effectively topple fascist rule. But as Alicia Garza, the co-founder of BLM, says in her new book, we can't be afraid to establish a base that is larger than the people we feel comfortable with. 10 years after Arab Spring, there is a deep despair about how things have gotten worse than what they were 10 years ago. But according to Nesreen Malik, writing in The Guardian recently, Arab Spring could not have succeeded, but a similar revolution now would have a better chance. Because dictatorship isn't just about the rule of one man, it is about the sterilization of democracy. After the despots fell, it became clear that decades of despotism had salted the earth. There were no opposition parties to harness and guide political energy, no charismatic figures who had returned from exile or escaped imprisonment to galvanize political movements, and no room for political discourse because there was no media ecosystem or intellectual space that was healthy enough to resist capture by conspiracies and sectarianism. But now, in 5 of those 8 countries, according to a recent poll, a majority do not regret the Arab Spring protests. It is a narrow margin, 5 out of 8, but she draws hope as follows. Things may be worse than they were a decade ago, but there is one fact that is now clear to the despots and the people alike, a fact that gives the people an advantage they lacked the first time around. It can happen. It has happened before. Now we know what it looks like, and next time we will know what is required of us. What is required of us is to build the democratic muscle in order to be able to topple the planet's 1%. Hedocratic education aims to build that ability in the planet's 99% to defend democracy and save the planet. Till next week, bye.